Hello, my dear friends. You're in the Military of Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 17th of August of 2025. Today we have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And we can say that we are living a day before the beginning of the global storm, the global political storm that is going to take place on the territory of Washington, where the European countries, European leaders, and European Zelensky himself are going to tomorrow on Monday on the 18th of August of 2025 with the purpose to start talks with the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, where they will try to convince him once again to take their side, to take their position, and to increase the pressure on the Russian Federation, to increase additional military help, and probably to continue the special military operation, or at least the war with the Russian Federation. European Union leaders fly to Washington to wedge into Ukrainian talks. On Monday, Trump and Zelensky will meet, joined by German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, NATO Secretary General Rutte, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, French President Emmanuel Macron, Italian Prime Minister Giorgio Meloni, Finnish President Alexander Stubb. Sky News also notes that Zelensky will be greeted in Washington without ceremonies and a red carpet. Very interesting situation. They're coming to Washington, they're coming to the Oval Office, and you know that some sources are saying that the main purpose of these European leaders is not to support Zelensky during his talks with President of the United States of America. They will be there just to shut Zelensky's mouth in case if he start doing the same thing that he did several months ago in the Oval Office when there was a show and huge scandal between the President of Ukraine and the President of the United States of America. These European leaders are going to be in Washington just with this purpose, not to ruin these talks, because everybody understands if Zelensky ruins these talks once again, most likely the United States of America will take Russian position forever and will not change this position until the end of the special military operation. On Monday, the issues of territories will be discussed with Zelensky. The US and Russia have agreed on security guarantees for Ukraine, but now everything depends on Kiev. US Presidential Special Envoy Witkov. Another important thing, the statement, an article published by Trump on X and his social network. Big progress on Russia, stay tuned, President Donald Trump. So something big has already been resolved between the United States of America and the Russian Federation, and there's just one small thing left to finish the war in Ukraine. The acceptance of Ukraine of everything that was achieved by Russia and the United States of America. And telling the truth, I'm not sure that Zelensky will accept everything that was agreed between Russia and the United States of America. It seems that tomorrow we're going to see the biggest show, the biggest comedy ever, probably since the beginning of this century. Anyway, let's wait and see what is going to be next. Tomorrow is going to be a very interesting day. The Russians at the same time continue their offensive operation. During the previous 24 hours, lots of changes were recorded, very interesting ones. So let's discuss them. And first, let's talk about the western Donetsk direction, where, according to information we have, indeed the Ukrainians managed to carry out very successful counter-offensive operation. This update was published yesterday by pro-Ukrainian resources by the 5th Mechanized Brigade, Heavy Mechanized Brigade. They counter-attacked Russian positions in the villages of Iskra and Zelenogai and managed to restore control over these territories. So this is the situation by the end of the 16th of August, and this is the situation by the end of the 17th of August. So several neutral mappers reported that Ukrainians managed to improve their positions. As for now, we are coloring these territories as a contested area or the gray zone until we get additional clarifications. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Pakrovsk agglomeration. When the neutral mappers reported that during the previous 24 hours, the Ukrainians managed to successfully counterattack Russians in the central part of the city and to restore control over the most important territories on the territory of the city of Pakrovsk and its agglomeration. So these are the changes on the ground between the dates. The Ukrainians counterattacked and restored control over these territories. And as for now, we are going to keep this area also as a gray zone or contested area until we get additional clarifications. The same thing happens to the northeast of the Pakrovsk agglomeration. Today, several mappers confirmed updates that were reported by Deep State yesterday and by first military corps Azov. According to those reports, the Ukrainians also managed to counterattack to the northeast of the agglomeration and to restore control of a significant number of territories. And based on those reports, today we had additional changes on the ground. So these are how the map. This is exactly how the map has been changed. This is the situation by the end of the 16th, and this is the situation by the end of the 17th of August of 2025. At the same time, we had very important video from the settlement of Kucherov Yar. For example, today, very reliable pro-Russian resources reported that just today, by the end of the 17th of August, the Russians managed to take under complete control the settlement of Kucherov Yar by the regular army. So this is very important. There are several pro-Russian resources who didn't update their maps deep inside of the territory of Ukraine, as many mappers and many experts did during the previous days and during the first days of a Russian offensive operation with sabotage and reconnaissance group. So the Russians are saying that there are two types of forces that were moving during the previous days: sabotage and reconnaissance group, and the Azov forces counterattacked exactly positions of sabotage and reconnaissance group, and they managed to retake them. And when talking about the Russian regular army, they continue advancing, maybe not so fast, very slowly, step by step, and today the regular army of the Russian forces managed to establish complete control over the settlement of Kucherov Yar. And we have geolocation that probably confirms Russian control at least over the outskirts of the settlement. In this video we can see how Ukrainian drone was attacking, very important, a Russian soldier. This is a Russian soldier, this is very important, and we have probably a first proof that confirms Russian control and Russian presence so deep inside of the territories that were taken by the sabotage and reconnaissance group. So this episode took place exactly in this area. This is the moment and this is the place that was attacked by Ukraine FPV drones. It seems that in this video we might see the beginning of Russian assault on the settlement of Kucherov Yar. So most likely the Russians answered the village itself, and most likely the Russians secured a stronghold to the north, to the east of the settlement. So as for now, we are not coloring the village of Kucherov Yar. We are waiting for additional reports, and maybe the Minister of Defense report, and probably this is the situation. We believe that this salient, this pocket, is the results of Russian breakthrough, really results of Russian breakthrough with Russian regular army. When talking about progress on the ground that was achieved by the sabotage and reconnaissance group of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, everything was recaptured by the Ukrainians during the previous days. Anyway, we believe that the progress that the Russians managed to achieve by regular army is enough, is really enough to probably to destroy the Ukrainian defense in this direction and to take additional territories that at the end will lead to complete collapse of Ukrainian defense around the Pakrovsk agglomeration. And now we see that currently the Russians are tasked just with several things: to secure the village of Kucherov Yar completely and to create a very powerful stronghold in this direction. Another important thing is to advance in the eastern direction with the purpose to take under complete control villages of Shakhova, Vladimirovka, Sofiivka and Toretsk. So these villages are the task of the armed force of the Russian Federation. Without taking under control these territories, the Russians have almost no chances to advance further in the northern and the northwestern directions. So anyway, we're waiting for additional updates, what is going to happen tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. We expect that maybe tomorrow, before the beginning of talks on the territory of Washington, the Russians will launch their full-scale offensive operation. Anyway, everything depends on tomorrow's meetings, and most likely everything depends whether the Russians are going to use massive or full-scale launchers of missiles and drones over the entire territory of Ukraine. I would like to remind you that the last time the Russians attacked the entire Ukraine took place probably several weeks ago. We have nothing like this anymore. The Russians managed to concentrate thousands of drones of Geraint types and missiles, and everything is ready to begin another wave of massive destructions over the entire territory of Ukraine. Everything depends on tomorrow's talks. If Zelensky rejects Russian and US proposal, then most likely we're going to see a very powerful blow carried out by the Russians. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Serebryanka direction. Very interesting details are coming from this area. The armed forces of the Russian Federation during the previous 24 hours managed to take under complete control the settlement by the name of Serebryanka, which is located to the northeast of the city of Siversk. Very important progress on the ground was published by the Russian resources, so this is the video we're talking about. In this video we can see the process of how exactly the Russians were fighting for the territory. We can see lots of artillery strikes. This is something like the beginning of the artillery preparation. Then we can see how Russian stormtroopers were entering the village of Serebryanka from many directions. Motorcycles, vehicles, infantry, just vehicles, light vehicles, heavy vehicles were moving and moving and moving. Tanks, infantry, fighting vehicles, everything was entering the city of Serebryanka from different sides. Then the clashes for the village began, and in the final part of this video we can see probably tens of episodes of how Russians were raising their flags in different parts of the city. So the village or the city was taken by the Russians completely. The source reported that Ukrainians tried to counterattack the settlement during the previous 24 hours, but all attacks were repelled. And right after the Russians secured the village of Serebryanka, we start receiving lots of very interesting updates from territory, strongholds and positions of the armed forces of Ukraine further in the western direction along the river of Siversk Donetsk. In this video we can see how those Russians that secured the village of Serebryanka, were bombing and attacking Ukraine positions along the river of Siversk Donetsk. Another stronghold was destroyed. A bit further in the western direction we have another additional video about the same story. The Russians, as a result of reconnaissance operation, managed to discover another position of the armed forces of Ukraine, and later this position was destroyed with artillery strikes. So it seems, and most likely the Russians, after the fall of the village of Serebryanka, will continue their offensive operation further, but this time they will continue advancing further in the western or northwestern direction towards the settlement by the name of Dronivka. There are lots of villages, territories, buildings and facilities that the Russians may try to take under complete control before the beginning of a major offensive operation in the direction of the city of Siversk. If Russians are able to take this territory under complete control, this will lead to complete collapse of Ukrainian logistics supply and support of their contingent who is currently located on the territory on the rest of what left from the Serebryanka forest. So this Ukrainian contingent could be caught and cooled by the Russians in coming days or maybe even hours, and the Ukrainians would be forced to fall back further in the southwestern direction towards the settlement by the name of Yampol. So first the Russians are trying and are planning to secure this territory. This will allow the Russians to maintain the lines, to shorten the distances, and of course to release additional forces that later could be used in major Russian offensive operations towards the city of Siversk itself, because it would be much more easier for the Russians to attack the city of Siversk, its northwestern and northern part. This can lead to physical cuts of main supply lines that Ukrainians use to support their contingent on the territory of this Siversk agglomeration. And it seems that the battle for the city of Siversk and the Siversk agglomeration may start much faster than the battle for the city of Konstantinovka, or than the final part of the major battle for the entire Pakrovsk agglomeration and the settlement of Dobropolye. Now let's move further and let's talk about the central Kupyansk direction. During the previous 24 hours, additional changes on the ground were recorded by the armed forces of the Russian Federation in the Borova direction. According to pro-Ukraine resources from Doomsday team, the armed forces of the Russian Federation managed to improve their positions, as you can see, significantly to the northeast of the settlement of Borova. So this is the situation by the end of this 16th of August, and this is the situation by the end of the 17th of August of 2025. The Russians improved their positions and got a bit closer to the settlement of Borova itself. You know that when talking about this Russian offensive operation, I have too many questions, because if you remember, several days ago, several resources reported that the Russians entered the settlement of Petropavlovka from the east, that there are very heavy clashes right now from this village, and you know that these two offensives in the direction of Kupyansk and the direction of Borova has no logic with, has nothing common with statements that the Russians are going to peacefully settle the conflict in Ukraine. Because according to the plan that was probably discussed and agreed upon by Donald Trump and Putin, Russia at the end will return back territories in Sumy and Kharkiv regions, most likely to exchange territories in the Donetsk region. So it seems that the Russians are attacking this territory, but there is no need to attack, or there is no sense to attack, because these territories would be returned back to Ukraine. So it seems that something is unlogical in the actions of the Russian forces, or the plan that was revealed by Reuters is fake, and Russia and the United States of America managed to agree on completely different things and different questions regarding the situation in Ukraine. So tomorrow we will understand everything. Tomorrow is a big storm, the biggest storm, a political storm is going to start, and the most important for the Russian Federation, the Western countries, the let's say the Western allies will fight each other on the territory of the Oval Office, which is obviously very good for the Russian Federation. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.